He knocked my phone. So if I hit her, what happens to me? What happens to me? What happens to me? She knocked my phone out my hand. She calling me a nigga. Y'all gonna let this happen? What type of people are y'all? You don't know me, man.
We don't bother. You're acting like a nigga, bro.
You act. Keep saying it. What did you call my wife? Give me your name too. Give me your name.
It freezes you. You know, it's when you're in a traumatic situation, it's fight, it's flight, it's freeze, and it was definitely a freezing moment. Like I can't believe she's saying this, and I think the best way to describe this is it almost feels like you're stuck because when that person says it, especially in this day and age, or just any generation, when you say it, I think they say it because they know they have a certain, like you said, a level of privilege and power, and the feeling is I'll get away with this, and it's a subtle thing because we know there's a power dynamic in this country. Unfortunately, there's not equity fully. So it's almost like, ha ha, look what I can do, and I can get away with it because before she was doing that, or even in the midst of it, she was calling over an officer. And I think that's the only reason why she got kicked out. I'm not sure if the officer heard the word or maybe the spit, but they did kick her out. And that began my pursuit of course of justice. But I froze, and it was like I felt helpless because if I do something, what's going to happen? If my wife does something, what's going to happen?
Right.
And I think, like you said, I expected more from the people who were there who looked like me. And also, to her white friend in the back, I would expect other people in general to step up. So it just feels like you're stuck, defenseless, and there's rage inside, but you don't feel like you should respond the way your emotions are telling you. And that's a paralyzing and traumatic feeling.
That's got to be so difficult. And then after the moment, right? Maybe you're on your way home with your wife, and you're likely reliving it because, like, what the heck just happened?
Yeah.
And I'm sure it sucked the joy out of whatever that experience was, right? It looked like you were at a festival or something really fun that should have been really fun. So now fast forward, you go through all of this and you have this experience, and yes, you received quite a bit of coverage on the news and in the press and the media. And it sounds like, thankfully, people took it seriously, and there was, proceedings and things like that happened. And I also saw a clip where she half-heartedly apologized in some weird way by saying that to her that word doesn't mean anything other than ignorance. Like, to her, she says that word to anybody who she feels is being ignorant in the moment, regardless of your color.
Right.
And I feel like that's kind of a lame way. I didn't hear any apology at all, frankly, but that kind of adds insult to injury, right? When you're on the receiving end of that. So I can only imagine that you've had to relive this over and over again. And then if we rewind 400 years, when we think about Black history, which you have a level of expertise in this as a teacher, so I'm excited to learn some of this from you. But the feeling you had in that moment is the same, I would imagine, the same feeling that your ancestors and the ancestors of other folks with dark skin who were brought here against their own will in chains on ships and boats and whatever modes of transportation they had, have felt for generation after generation after generation. The rage, at the same time, coupled with the fear and the paralyzing reality that if you do anything, it's only going to get worse for you.
Yeah.
That is something that I have never experienced, right? If somebody does something wrong to me, or verbally or physically assaults me, I know that I can take action against that person, and likely no additional harm is going to come from me to me because of the way I look. And unfortunately, your families and your history hasn't proven out to be the same for you. So how explain to us how Black history has saved you and how you've made those connections to bring you where you are today.
Yeah. So for me, like you said, when we left and you just going through the motions of everything, my mind was because I grew up and I was a fighter. And I don't mean that in the sense of I push through. Like now I'm a fighter in life. Literally, I push through things and I motivate people. But I literally fought all the time growing up until I was about 10 or so. And that was just like the way I expressed my frustration with things. As I matured and got older, that wasn't the best way to express my anger. So I've mellowed out a lot, and that was the first time I was faced with the conflict of that magnitude, in which it was like you feel the only way you should react is to fight because you need to protect yourself and your wife. And in that situation, it took me back. Like, what am I doing? What am I supposed to do? And for me, the way I fought was, of course, by speaking about it, by educating people, by going through the justice system, and for whatever it's worth. And that for me was even like a lose situation, kind of, because I'm like, well, look, if we respond with violence, we're gonna lose. Like the cop gonna come over, who knows what's gonna happen. Also, if we fight this situation, we could potentially lose. So, but on the other side, I have something to live for. I have my kids, I have my wife, I have a community behind me, my family, and everything. So I say Black History saved my life because it gave me the vantage point. It gave me the knowledge to know that it didn't happen to me because of me per se. Now, of course, we know with history, we say, oh, because they were Black. Like, no, I don't take it that way. I take it as if somebody treats you a certain way, it's a reflection of how they feel about themselves. So it doesn't have to just be a race thing. If somebody is bullying you, and racism is like a form of systemic bullying. So if somebody bullying a child in school, you've seen it on movies before. It gets to a point where they break down and they're like, well, yeah, I dealt with this, or something gets to them. It's the same thing. I didn't do anything to this person. Now, the difference in this situation with bullying is she felt comfortable because, again, she has a system that she feels like would protect her with doing that. Yeah. And again, so Black History saved me because it said, well, this happened to you, and you come from people who have always fought and persevered and created amazing things. So you don't accept that. Now, whether I pursued it through the justice system or not, I was going to push forward and fight, because I knew one day, especially with me recording it and posting it, which takes another level of bravery. Like, and I've spoken to people who've dealt with stuff like this, and a lot of people don't want it out there. They might go through it and they might just move on. For me, it was, as a historian, I look, again, 400, 500, 600 years in the past, and I look that far in the future. So I had kids who were 3 and 1 at the time. And my mindset was, one day they'll know about this, or one day, even if I didn't post it, I'll have to share this with them. And I need them to know that their father carried himself the appropriate way moving forward, and he stood up for them in the future, and for their mom right there. So it gave me that perspective, and that's what history does.